Welcome, good afternoon. Thank you for joining us for Snappy Imports. Phyllis Erickson with Automation Services Manager of Projects and Software Support will be showing us how different ways that we can import into IDEA. Automation Services is the U.S. distributor of Caseware IDEA, and we are excited to show you how easy it is to import various files into the IDEA program. Phyllis, thank you for sharing with us, and I'm going to let you take it away.
Alrighty, thank you for letting me do this, and thanks everyone for coming. So the first thing about IDEA is that it has an import tool that lets you take data from different sources, and the first thing you need to do when you're going to analyze data from different sources is standardize it. So IDEA's import tool is going to bring unstructured data such as sitting in Excel spreadsheets or sitting in PDFs, as well as structured data sitting in ERP systems, all into one tool so your method of measuring is all the same. So that's the key reason why you have to import the data into IDEA before you start analyzing it. On the screen is a table that shows the different file types that you can bring in. Most ERP systems allow for ODBC or some sort of export to either CSV or Excel. Those are the most common, but there are still a lot of reports that the only way you can get them is in Adobe PDF, that sort of thing. So, so far, after working with IDEA for the last 12 years, I have not found a file I couldn't import unless it was a graphic, an actual picture. And then you just run that through optical character reading software, and away you go. So basically, what we're going to look at today is taking data from a bunch of different sources and turning it into one organized set of files that you can compare apples to apples then. What we're going to specifically look at over the next few minutes is the fact that you can drag and drop a file into IDEA as one kind of import, where IDEA automatically recognizes what kind of file it was. Then we're going to have a shipping report that's in PDF format, and we're going to turn that into a usable spreadsheet-looking kind of thing. And then we're going to say, well, what if we get that report monthly? Do I have to go through all those steps every month, or what? No, you can just reuse the import template you built the first time to bring in subsequent reports that are set up the same way. And then the other thing we're going to look at is there are some software applications that allow you to print to Excel. And so you have an Excel file, but it's got report headings scattered throughout the data. And so, is there a way that's easier than going through and tediously removing each of those report heading lines throughout the report? Yes, there is. We're going to take a quick look at that as well. So that being said, I gave you a sneak preview. I can't seem to go the right way. Sorry about that. That being said, we're going to go to IDEA itself. And Lindsay, did my screen change? Yes, it looks like it changed. Great. So now you're looking at the actual software, Caseware IDEA. And the first thing I did was I created a project called Snappy Imports. I'm going to cancel out of that. But if I go here to Properties, you can see that my project is named Snappy Imports. So I created a project in IDEA. And as you can see, there's nothing in there. So the first thing I need to do is import my data. So what I'm going to do is I want to just drag and drop this general ledger file. I'm just going to pick it up from my File Explorer, drag and drop it. Now, IDEA recognized right away that it was an Excel file, so it launched the Excel Import Wizard. And in the Excel Import Wizard, I have some little tools that are nice. I'm able to, it's able to recognize that the first row there has my column names or my field names in it. So I'm going to check that little box. First row is field names. And then Excel has a habit of having null values. So typically what I want to do in Excel imports is tell it tell IDEA to treat any kind of null numeric value as a 0. In this case, I only have the one spreadsheet, but if I'd had more than one spreadsheet, they would have shown up here. I could have chosen whether to import all of them or not. I can name my file down here, then I hit OK, and that's all there is to the Excel import. It's quite simple, and now I can go in here and work with that. Of course, that's another webcast, so I won't take your time working with that file. Now, ideally, after you set up your project, what you really want to do is take advantage of this Library tab down here at the bottom left. The Library tab is going to store things like equations, import definitions, but most importantly, the first thing that you want to put in your library are the source files you're going to use. So here we have, I'm going to close that GL file so it's not distracting. So here we have Dave's Bookstore. These are the shipping reports I was talking about. Obviously, we're always going to be using sample data for these kinds of things, not anyone's real data. So I'm going to right-click it and tell it to import into IDEA. Now, if you notice, again, IDEA automatically recognized that it's a PDF and chose the correct wizard for me. And the reason why I keep bringing that up is what we have found is that typically importing data, getting the data to work with, whatever the tool, is typically the hardest thing for people. And some people are extremely savvy about file types and all this sort of thing. Other people kind of struggle with that. So IDEA's got it set up to, again, the whole point of the tool is to make things as easy as possible. So it's recognizing things as often as it can for you. So it knows it's a PDF. Here's my file name, so I didn't have to go searching. That's one reason why I really like using the library with the source files. I don't have to go searching for anything. It's all organized and ready to go. So I'm going to click Next, and when I do that, there's a utility called the Report Reader that's going to load. Excuse me. And what it's done is it's stripped out all of the graphics that are normally associated with a PDF and turned this kind of into just it's sort of like your Outlook emails. You can have an HTML email or you can have a plain text email. So this has become plain text, if you will. Now, the thing about the Report Reader is that it's going to take this data. As you can see, we've got the breaks where the report headers are in and that sort of thing. It's going to take this data and turn it into that spreadsheet-looking kind of format that you saw on the first file that I imported. What you want to do is you're going to set traps and build a field. Setting a trap is simply telling IDEA what pattern occurs on every line that you want for that particular data. You always want to start with the most detail of the transactions available. So I'm going to start with the actual detail of this first item that was sold. And it says, what do I want to do? I want to create a standard layer. There are things called floating layers, which would be a much longer webcast. So we're going to be working with standard layers. But I will actually be showing you a floating trap. Those are kind of fun. So what happens is it took a copy of that sample line and it put it between these two yellow lines. So I'm going to build the trap above the yellow lines, and I'm going to build the fields. A field is a column. I'm going to build the fields between the yellow lines. Now, in this particular case, a lot of people say to use the dates for traps, but if you look at this report, I've got the dates are not formatted in a consistent manner. So that's really not going to be a good trap because remember, the trap is a repeating pattern of data that happens on every line. So I have values. I personally like to go with numbers. I have numbers here. So over here, I have the option to build a text trap, which means it's a parameter kind of thing, like a placeholder for any letter, alpha character. Or I can have a numeric trap, which means it's going to capture anything where there's a number in that particular space. So if you count it over 1, 2, 3, 4, yada, 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 to whatever position that is, and there's a number there, as you can see, IDEA capturing all those lines. Well, I don't want that. So I need to continue building my trap. Second number. Oh, that's looking pretty good right there. So I'm going to go ahead and do this and just be real specific about that trap. Now, because I know I have subsequent files that are similar to this, and I know that Adobe has a tendency that when you strip the graphics away, the text data can kind of float on the page, I'm going to make that trap a floating trap. And now I've got my trap. I can kind of preview to see if it's catching only what I want. So it's catching only these actual transaction lines. It's not catching anything that might have a number in it, so that's working exactly the way I want it to. Great. So now I'm going to go over here and capture the date. Now remember, the date is not consistently formatted. So in this case, I'm going to go over here. When I chose that area to be a column or a field, all of a sudden this little guy over here on the right called Field Details started displaying. Now, I recommend that you always name your first layer the base layer. It's just, if you have something with more than one layer and you need to make a change, it's easier if you've named your layers. And I'm going to, the name of the field, that's the column heading, if you will. So I'm going to look right over here. It says ship date. So I'm going to type ship date. In this case, I'm going to say that it's going to be a character data type because it's not consistently formatted. If it were consistently formatted, I could use a date type. Now, I'm going to make a deliberate mistake here. You can tell from looking at the report that all three of these items, accounting 1, 2, 3, accounting concepts, and basic accounting, they were all sold on May 1st. There's a way to deal with the fact that May 1st is not typed in on each line of the report, because maybe later we'll want to pull out all of the basic accounting records, and we'd want to have the date. Well, the date's not there. So I'm going to make a mistake to show you how easy it is to fix and how that's dealt. So then here we're going to go grab the item, and again I'm going to name the field item. It's a character field. That's great. And then I'm going to capture the amount. Now, if you notice, IDEA recognized it was numeric and it had 2 decimals. The only thing I had to type in was the name of the field. And that's all there is on that line. I'm going to save the layer. There's a convention in IDEA that the green check mark means save and the red X means cancel. I'm going to save the layer. Now, I don't know about you, but I'm curious. I always want to see, ooh, how does it look so far? So I'm going to go here and preview what I've built so far. And this is what we've got going. Now, do you see this error I have? The ship date didn't carry down. So all I have to do to fix that is just highlight the field, go over here to where it says attributes, and change that to use value from previous record. So when IDEA reads that line, it has the date. When it reads the next line and there's no date, it will just pull the value down, and it'll keep stair-stepping it down like that so that you get this. So that was a very easy fix. Now, we probably want to grab the account number and the company name, so let's do that next. So again, I'm going to highlight my sample. One thing about this, when you start adding layers to the base layer, let's stop for a second, you must grab the data that's associated with your original sample. So this line right here, May 1st, 2006, accounting 1, 2, 3, that was my first sample. Everything else that I build has to relate to that. So I have to get that item's account number. If I went down and grabbed this account number, I would get skewed data. So I need to be sure and get the account number that goes with the original line I started with. I'm going to again create a standard layer. And this trap is very simple. It has the word account on it. So you've got not only these placeholders, but you can actually use the value that is in the sample. So I'm going to grab the account number there. I'm going to name my layer account. That way, if I had to go back and make a change, I would know where I needed to make the change. Account number. Now, with account numbers, invoice numbers, PO numbers, that sort of thing, I recommend that you change those to characters, and definitely zip codes change to characters. In most software, if you tell the software that something is a number, and if that something has a leading zero, it will drop the zero. So you want to be sure and tell it that it's a character. I'm going to not make that mistake about using value. I'm going to be sure and use the value from the previous record, so my account number carries down for each of these items. And ditto on the company. You can be a little sloppy too on that. You don't have to be too precise on your fields unless you're worried about space. And again, I'm going to use value from previous record. I'm going to save that layer. Take a quick peek. Well, now that's weird looking, isn't it? Let's go see what's going on there. Learning the ropes. So this is a case of, if you'll recall, I mentioned that data in PDFs has a tendency to float around. Do you see how this company doesn't line up? So now let's go back and go to Layers, Layer Manager. Good thing I named it. Now I can find the account layer. I'm going to edit that. And I'm going to change my trap. I'm going to put my trap over here. And I'm going to make it a floating trap. And now you can see that Satori ink has been captured correctly. And that's looking good. So this is, as you can see, this is a very forgiving tool as well. If you're dealing with a 200-page PDF, I've seen 4,000-page PDFs, and there's some kind of floating that starts on page 200. You don't want to have to. You want it to be a forgiving tool so you can go and make those corrections very easily. So now I've captured what I want to from this report. I'm going to save the template. What I've been doing is building an import template. So I'm going to save that template. And I'm just going to call it Dave's Bookstore. So I know it goes for all of my imports. And then now I'm going to import that information into ID. Yes, I'm serious. Proceed with the import. Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and close that. I don't need it anymore. I like to generate field statistics, which we won't go into on this webcast, but I like to do that on the import whenever possible. IDEA recognize the file name and put it in for me. All I have to do is click Finish. And poof, there we are. So now I need to bring in the June report for Dave's Bookstore. I'm going to right-click it, tell IDEA to import it. Now, optional template file, that's where I can go. IDEA went to immediately the correct file location. I didn't have to go searching. I hate searching through things. So anytime I don't have to search for something, I am so happy. So here's Dave's Bookstore import template. When you reuse a template, I do recommend that you hit Edit Template, because particularly with PDFs, that data floats around, and sometimes you see here it floated just one character off. So I'm going to use a tool called Scan for Errors, and it found the field. Scan for Errors is basically looking at each field and saying, do I have a space to the left and a space to the right, or is there something right next to this field? So if there's something right next to it, it says, oh, hey, you need to look at this. So I'm going to move the field one character to the left, and then I'm going to extend it a character, tell it to change, and it ran through the rest of here. I also like to just do a quick preview just to be sure. Yep, and everything looks good. Okay, File, Import Report into IDEA. Oh, that's right. I made a small change, didn't I? And there we go. I'm going to generate field statistics. And there's my June record. That's how fast it was to bring in the second month's report. The next thing I wanted to talk about, so let me just recap. We did the drag and drop. We've imported a PDF. We've reused the import template. So now let's talk about this. I wonder if it will let me open that. No, I can't open it from here. Excuse me just one second. I wanted to show you what this looks like. So we don't want to look at that one. So this is where I'm talking about where you get an Excel file. You'll notice we're in Excel right now. This is where you get an Excel file, excuse me, that's been printed, a report that's been printed to Excel. And so you have headers, and if this were multiple pages, that header would be repeating. So people have to go in and delete the headers and try and shore things up before they import it into IDIP. There's an easier way to do that. So what we're going to do is we're going to import it using the Excel import first, but this time I'm not going to check any of those boxes. And so as you can see, it kind of looks like what it, like a report. And I've got all this mess and space, and it's just not what I want it to be. So the next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to export this to a text fixed link. You can export files from IDEA, by the way, into Access or Excel or CSV. I'm going to use the fixed link option, though. And there are no field names to include, so I'm just going to tell it OK. All righty, so now I'm going to close these guys. And I'm going to left-click this and grab it from the export. Well, if I can left-click correctly, I will. Oh, I don't want to open it. There we go. So I dragged it down to my source files, and now I can go and import that. Only now I want to use the report reader again. And I would do the same kinds of things that I did in the previous one. For example, I would start with the location. Oh, but let me show you something interesting you can do with the report reader. Do you see how in this file, there's a beginning balance on the first line, and then you have your actual debit, credit, and ending balance on the next lines? You can do a multi-line sample selection. So let me go ahead and show that to you real quick. So in this case, I'm going to use location as my trap. So you can see it's grabbing the right things. And let's say I'll just go there, and I will call that my base layer. And that's our location code. Come on. And it's character. This is one of those areas that I was talking about. I have a leading 0, so I want to be sure and set that as a character. I'm going to skip the city. But I'm going to go in here, and I'm going to get the beginning balance. And that's fine. It's numeric with 2 decimals. Now, this particular report was lining up on the left. So I'm going to go at it that way. So these are my debits. And here are my credits. I can't spell or type. Well, I can spell, I just can't type, right? And then here is my ending balance. And I'm going to hit save. And then I'm going to preview it. Now, isn't that interesting the way this report is laid out? It doesn't actually foot across. Again, on different webcasts, I would go ahead and import this, and then I would add a column where I recalculated the beginning balance, debits, and credits to be sure the balance was coming out correctly. So that's, but I did want you to see how you can bring in that multi-line kind of layer, because that's always a challenge to people. And then again, I would save it, save the template. And then we would import that into IDEA. And generate field stats, and there we go.